For 3 memorable years, red and black were the colors of royalty in the NBA. But that dynasty is now history. Soon, a new champion will reign. This symbol of supremacy rides on the outcome. The two teams intent on seizing the prize have different styles and personnel, but they share something essential. The New York Knicks and the Houston Rockets are passion personified. Through good times and bad, Patrick Ewing has been the man in New York. For 9 years, his ability and desire have never diminished. All-star, dream teamer, but still, one precious credential is missing, and he has learned these opportunities are rare. Hakeem Olajuwon's play this year has exhausted all superlatives. Still, the league's MVP knows his individual success was a direct result of team unity, a unity they must depend on to defeat a Ewing-led team, something Hakeem was unable to do once before. 10 years ago, Ewing and Olajuwon met in the NCAA championship game. Hakeem outscored Patrick 15-10 that night. But when the final score was tallied, Ewing and Georgetown had fulfilled their dream. A decade later, the circumstances are different, but each is again on the verge of a championship. The question, whose team will have the skill and not incidentally the heart to ascend to the vacant NBA throne? It begins tonight with this trophy and all it represents at stake.
Peace and blessings. Welcome to GOAT James Kingdom. On this episode, we're going to go ahead and discuss whether or not today's NBA is really horrible and should we go back to what they consider the greatest basketball era of all time, which is the 1990s basketball. What you just watched was the intro on NBC to Game 1 of the NBA Finals in 1994, where Patrick Ewing and the New York Knicks went up against Hakeem Olajuwon and the Houston Rockets, which ended up being a 7-game series and a great series, so this should be a great depiction of how the 90s basketball was played, including the fact that we have two class centers going up against each other in the 90s with the style of play that all of the zesty Jeffries complain about today, which is going down low and going to the low block and posting up majority of a basketball game. So this should be the great brand of basketball that we all talk about that we say no longer exists in today's NBA. We have two class titans going up against each other, but we do know it is a team sport. So what about the other guys? So let's bring up the players that are supposedly here to help Patrick Ewing. And as we look, this is what John Starks and Derek Harper were doing for the Knicks in the playoffs in 1994. As you can see, these guys are not that great of three-point shooters, although John Starks did have a good run during the playoffs three-point shooting wise. But this is what he was doing in the Eastern Conference right before the NBA Finals. This is supposed to be the guy that was Michael Jordan's competition. These are the guys that were supposedly giving Jordan tough competition as the Knicks. This is why we tell you guys you need to go back and watch the game. When you go back and watch, we're watching Charles Smith being highlighted, averaging 12 points per game. And it didn't get better with the Houston Rockets. Here it is, Vernon Maxwell, the second best player on the Houston Rockets, averaging 14 points per game in the playoffs. He only averaged about 14 for the regular season as well. But the difference is that the Houston Rocket team was a three-point shooting team. And as you can see in the playoffs, they got very hot. And this is what they highlighted about the Houston Rockets. So with all that being said, let's go actually watch how these two teams played so that we can see the brand of basketball that everybody tells us we need to go back to.
The Rockets control. Robert Horry picked up on a switch by John Starks. Otis Thorpe being played here by Patrick Ewing. Goes to the running hook. Rebounded by Charles Smith. And here comes John Starks. Charles Smith. Derek Harper. Starks. Ewing. Rebounded by Thorpe. Maxwell with Starks back on the pull-up. And the Knicks back to the offense. Just underway. Opening minutes. Game 1 of the best of 7 between.
So here you see the New York Knicks and the actual Houston Rockets running sets and running plays and taking ill-advised shots just like every other era and just like today's era. As you can see there, John Starks taking bad shots. We saw Vernon Maxwell on a fast break not take it to the lane and decide to do it here just to smoke a layup and not even get nothing on the backboard. And then the guy that they love to say has the fantastic footworks travels because he couldn't put the ball down and dribble in the paint.
Well, as you can understand, everybody a little bit nervous, a little bit tentative, and it looks like players get their hands on the basketball and make sure they hold it. And if they get any kind of look, throw it up to the basket to get rid of these butterflies.
And on cue, NBC commentators is giving excuses for the 90s players. But let's continually watch this. As you can see, guys could only get to the basket and try to get a shot off. But when you left them open like this, guess what they did? They actually took the shot because you actually are open. Taking an open shot is better than a contested shot. But nobody was saying Derek Harper shouldn't shoot that, even though he was shooting 26% during the playoffs. But as you can see here, this is not that great of a basketball. They can't even get into a normal play. And then they foul because they couldn't do nothing. Then let's continually watch this. As you can see, we're going to watch the New York Knicks pass the ball around the paint until they find an open man, which is Charles Oakley shooting a 17-foot jumper. Is this what we should be doing? Letting Charles Oakley shoot 15-foot jumpers? This is not great basketball. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 90s basketball, though. This is the golden era. As you can see, let's watch the Houston Rockets try to get the ball down to what? Akeem Olajuwon, just so that they can call illegal defense. Ladies and gentlemen, this was called every game in the 90s because you had to actually play defense by the rules, not because of your skill set or a player's skill set. Let's watch it again. Robert Horry is sitting here telling him, call the illegal defense because this man is not guarding nobody. You physically are limited defensively in the 90s because of illegal defense. Look where Charles Oakley has to be. He has to be above the actual free throw line, and he has to be on the weak side block, giving Akeem Olajuwon one-on-one basketball. And this is what they want to say was better defense. The defense that was limited in actually restricting Akeem Olajuwon from even getting the basketball, let alone being able to stop Akeem Olajuwon once he gets the ball. So the New York Knicks are limited as a team defensively on what they can do to stop Akeem Olajuwon based on rules, not based on the Houston Rockets skill sets. And because of those rules, Charles Oakley legitimately has to guard a man that is not even in action in any kind of way in this particular play, but he has to by the rules. And Robert Horry is doing nothing but actually creating space for Akeem Olajuwon to actually get the ball, which is why today's players take threes to create that same space.
Back with the call of illegal defense the first time. This is the warning against the Knicks.
And as you can hear there, they legitimately called illegal defense so much that they used to give you a warning before actually letting the team take a free throw for it. And then another lie about the 90s was hand checking. Let's watch them call a foul right here for hand checking.
Sam Cassell called for his first team foul on the Rockets.
You can see both hands on the dribbler, not now just grabbing the arm. And this Sam sitting on the bench has to recognize and see what happened early in the ballgame. Well, one was called on Harper and then Smith, and you got to make the adjustment, but he is a rookie.
So there you see Sam Cassell gets called for hand checking, and they called it several other times in this game. Again, this is game 7 of the NBA Finals. As you can see, Patrick Ewing is all the Knicks have. They have him to take 18, 20-foot fadeaway jumpers with Akeem Olajuwon draped all over him.
Patrick Ewing was looking to pass the ball quite a bit. Right now, he doesn't look sure at what he wants to do. Here, he took the shot with Olajuwon draped all over him.
And this is the brand of basketball that we should be going back to, going down to a big man for him to take an 18, 17-foot fadeaway jumper while it's being contested. You guys think that this is great basketball because you were a child watching this. You were not even an adult watching this. The NBA of that era was all one-on-one. That's why Patrick Ewing lost this NBA Finals, because at the end of the day, he was not as good as a 1994 Akeem Olajuwon. It didn't matter what style of basketball was being played. At the end of the day, it was one man versus the other man. The NBA did not have enough talent outside of these superstars to actually have great brand of basketball. That's why these were very low scoring finals, and that's why they actually had low ratings, and David Stern had to defend the NBA.
Halftime in Houston, Game 7. Rockets lead the Knicks by 2, 45-43. Joined live now by NBA Commissioner David Stern. David, taking nothing away from the excitement throughout this series and the feeling in this building and the great determination and the achievements of these two teams, the ratings for the finals are down. The ratings for the finals are down.
The ratings for the finals are down.
And many people feel that if this style of play becomes dominant in the NBA, the league will lose some of the elements that led to its popularity. Do you share that concern?
No, I think there's an ebb and flow, Bob. A decade ago, people were saying that we had to change the rules because there was too much scoring, no one played defense. We should have the zone come in. Now there's just a lot of defense being played. We will be looking into maybe tightening up some of the calls, but Charles Oakley doesn't have to apologize for not being Michael Jordan. He's out there hustling, and he's an all-star, and that's a lovely kind of play in its own way, watching players hustle the way these two teams are.
Recently, I've heard both Pat Riley and Chuck Daly say that unless there are rules changes, and they didn't say this critically, they just said it as an expert's observation, unless there are rules changes, this will be closer to the style of play throughout the league the next few years than in the last decade that was, of course, dominated by Jordan, Johnson, and Bird.
I think you could expect us to look at not rules changes, but possibly tightening up the calls a bit in the looking at it over the summer. Perhaps a little bit more movement, letting players get a little freer than this very tough defense that's being played allows them to. But we're, our ratings are only down domestically. There are 117 countries that are getting this finals. These are the most people that have ever watched an NBA finals in our history. Our ratings are only down domestically. There are 117 countries that are getting this finals. These are the most people that have ever watched an NBA finals in our history.
Moving in the three-point line, maybe not as close as college rules, but is that possible?
Yes, when we play at the McDonald's Open, we have a diplomatically negotiated three-point line in Europe. It's usually at about 22 feet, someplace between the international line and our 23.9 at its highest at the key. But I think that's something that the steering committee has been looking at very closely, as well as after the Olympics, the whole issue of the trapezoid, the Olympic lane. Those are two issues that come and go. But as the scores get lower, my guess is the competition committee is going to want to look at it a little more carefully.
But as the scores get lower, my guess is the competition committee is going to want to look at it a little more carefully.
Lastly, these finals, for the most part, have been played clean and hard. But as you know, there has been a problem over the last couple of months with a perception, and it's not unique to basketball. It's throughout the sports world that there's a tone of trash talking and confrontation and fighting. What, if anything, can be done to cut that back?
That's easy. Our fans have come to depend on us to be the leader here. And next year, you'll see that the reduction in violence, which was significant, the reduction this year, is going to be even greater, and we won't disappoint our fans. Our players are great athletes, hustling athletes, and they're not going to be fighting or doing the kinds of things that are going to turn off fans, and particularly kids.
David, thanks a lot. Sit back and enjoy the second half of Game 7.
It's very tense.
It is that. The Rockets leading the Knicks by 2.
So let's get this straight. In the middle of the 1990s, in the height of Patrick Ewing and Akeem Olajuwon's career, where big men were the big thing in the NBA, they had low ratings and people complaining about physicality and trash talking, to the point the NBA commissioner had to show up at halftime in a Game 7 of an NBA Finals to explain how the NBA was doing just fine. Although people were complaining about how the play style in the NBA in that era was horrible and the low scoring was an actual sign of that, and this is the era of basketball they want us to go back to, where players couldn't dribble or actually shoot the ball from the perimeter, just to defend it with the actual term of toughness and hustle. Basically meaning the NBA had to get rid of the goons and the guys who were only in the league to actually foul and not actually play good basketball. As an example, they had to highlight Charles Oakley starting all of the games in the 1994 season. How is this in highlight? How is this a stat worth praising? But they needed to do that because, again, the New York Knicks had nothing but Patrick Ewing. And this is why we are not going back to this style of basketball.
Harper. Picked off by Cassell.
Now let's watch some more of this Game 7 NBA Finals of Golden Basketball. As you can see, Derek Harper turned over the ball, and we're going to watch what the Houston Rockets is trying to do. This is the play that everybody wants us to go back to, where guys just sit there, not look to get their shot, but look to pass the ball down in the low block just for the referee to call a foul, which looks like a tic-tac foul, which they say they never called in the 90s. Again, these are all the lies that we are debunking and exposing right here on this video. This is the 1994 NBA Finals, the two best teams in the NBA at the time. This should be the best basketball we're going to see in the 90s, but look at what we're looking at. Guys who are sitting around here not looking to score, but to get it to some guy on the low block so that he can dribble and dribble until he can take a fadeaway contested shot. This is why the Knicks were never anything in the 90s, and they couldn't win in the 90s because they didn't have a great basketball team, didn't have a great basketball philosophy. Obviously, Hakeem Olajuwon is better. Houston Rockets are going to do the same thing here. They're just looking to find a way to get the ball to the low block. Nobody's trying to get a basket here. They're looking for Hakeem Olajuwon to the point that they turn over the basketball. This is horrible basketball compared to what we're watching today, where everybody can score and try to score instead of this style of basketball.
Patrick Ewing starting to feel it right now, sees that no double team is coming, little hesitation dribble, the long step and the pump fake to get away and clear himself from the tough defense of Olajuwon.
So again, this is the brand of basketball they want us to go back to. They don't want to have the basketball where guards are actually taking over the game like a Sam Cassell did in these NBA finals, because he had the skill level to do it. Look at him. He's actually penetrating, getting his shot off. He's not waiting to see if the big man's going to get the ball. He's actually attacking the defense and making the defense actually play. That's why today's NBA is better. They play better defense and they play better offense, because as you can see, guards back then were horrible. Look at the guards for the Knicks. Nobody's guarding you. Take that shot, break it. Just to pass it out for a sidestep three, which y'all claim nobody was doing in the 90s, and for that to be contested and blocked. Again, this was horrible basketball because at the end of the day, you only needed big men to actually score. People were just going into the post, and when we had guards like Sam Cassell into the league, it was new, innovative basketball that eventually took some time for us to see with other guards being drafted, such as Allen Iverson and Kobe Bryant. But throughout the 90s, we had guards like John Starks who were considered stars, and they were not really good at basketball. We don't want to go back to this. We're fine with the way the NBA is now.